Hi, welcome to today's video where I'm going to be explaining what Git and GitHub is in the simplest way possible. Show you how to install Git and walk you through the most important Git commands you actually use day to day, from creating a repo to pushing your code to GitHub. First of all, before we install anything, I'm just going to walk you through what Git and what GitHub is. So this is GitHub basically, this layout here. So this is the actual GitHub website. So this is my account, my personal account. So first of all, what is Git? So Git is a version control tool. That basically means Git is what tracks your changes, it tracks your code, whatever change you make in your code, it tracks it. So basically you integrate Git into your code. That's into your integrated development environment. That's VS Code, whatever code editor you use basically. So it's when you integrate Git into your code editor, then you'll be able to track your changes and merge and do any other thing that you wanted to do, any other action you wanted to perform. So that's basically what Git itself is. So then GitHub is an online platform where those Git projects stay. Meaning it's like when after Git has tracked those your projects or those your codes and every other thing, then you push those changes out and those projects, then you put them in GitHub. So GitHub is like the storage for Git. So think of it as a cloud storage, just like Google Drive, where you have all your folders and everything is on Google Drive. So you have those local folders and local files and every other thing, then you push them to Google Drive. So Google Drive in this case is serving as the GitHub, and those local folders and files are serving as Git basically. So Git is tracking and then GitHub is holding. That's basically what Git and GitHub are. So in this layout here, this all these things, this here, popular repositories. What are repositories? Repositories are is basically where you store your code in that cloud. Like the way I said, GitHub is the cloud that is holding those your files and folders. So a repository is what is holding those folders and files. So basically all these things here are repositories. They are repositories that I have locally, but they are also here on GitHub because I pushed them to GitHub. So the next thing is this thing here. So 155 contribution. So when all these green dots things here, so when you make any changes on your code, basically after you've integrated Git into your code, when you make any changes and then you push it here on GitHub, it comes here as a contribution. So if I hover over this, you see 7 contribution on September 9th. That means on the 9th of September I made 7 contributions basically. So in essence, the whole point of GitHub is just a collaborative environment. That's like the main purpose of GitHub. So you can like collaborate with other people easily, meaning that all these things here, if I come here, that is on repositories where all my repositories are. If I come here, not everything, if you come to this same URL here, you are going to see my profile, but you are not going to see 26 repositories. You might see like 20 or 19 repositories because not all repositories are public. Meaning you can set your repository visibility. That is how it shows publicly or privately or anyhow you want it to be. So you can set it to both private. This one now, this particular repository is private, meaning that if you come to my my GitHub account, you are not going to see this particular repository because it is set as private. So let's just create a repository. To create a repository, you just come here on new and then give it a name. That's give the repository a name itself. Let's call it test. You can give it a description, or you can just leave that's not necessary. And this is where you set the visibility. So here on this point you can set it to either private or public. So I'm just going to leave it at public and then create repository. This here now, the repository is created, but nothing is inside that repository. Like nothing is inside this repository for now. If I go back to my other repositories, so you see now the repository count has increased to 27. If I just come to a repository here, this one, you see that all these things now, these are folders that I have locally that are now on this GitHub cloud basically. So if I come here, you see all the files. These are all the files inside this particular repository. If I come back to this one that we created, which is test, so to push things to this repository, you need that Git I was talking about. So Git that tracks your code over time. You now need that Git to now push your project to this GitHub here. So to do that, you need to install Git. So to install Git, you just come to this URL here, this one, and then install for Windows or whatever operating system you're on. There's also Mac OS, Linux, and I'm on Windows, so I'm just going to install for Windows this one here. After you're done installing the setup, you can now come here, just search for it, and it should be an app now. So this, and you can just click next on every other thing. So here I'm just going to say launch this, not this, just launch. It's almost like your command line. So you run Git on your command line. So this Git command line basically. So on this now, I can now perform different Git commands. That's to push my local folders and files and projects to GitHub. So I'm just going to run this to check what version that I'm on this video. So git and then dash dash version, this will check the version that I'm on. So you see that if you just see this, if you see this, just know that whatever you see here, as long as it gives you something, a version, just know that yeah, you actually installed the right thing. And another thing, you can also run this same git command in your VS Code. That means in your VS Code there is an integrated terminal. To activate it or to open the terminal, you just click Control Shift and then backtick like this. So this integrated terminal, I'm just going to open this more. So if I come here now to this drop down and come to git bash, that's this one. So you see that I have this same thing that I had here, this same terminal that I had here, and now I have it on my VS Code. So I can still run this same git commands in my VS Code folder or project. Let me just run that same git and then version again. So you see it still gives me this same version. So I want to now configure git, meaning I want to say to git that okay, whatever changes I'm making, whatever edits that I'm doing to this folder, link it to this username and then this email. So I'm basically going to tell git my email and my username. The email and username you are going to use is the same one you used for your Git account, your GitHub account rather. The same one you use for your GitHub account is the same email and username you're going to use for this. So to configure that, I'm just going to say git and then config global. This is global user.name and then the name. So you've configured the username now. So whatever changes or whatever comment I'm going to make in is going to be linked to this name. And then config and global user dot email, and then just also tell it your, so here you write your actual email, so like this, so that's good to go. And then I'm just going to walk through some git commands that we actually use to push push to this particular repo now. So this repo is just here yet. We've not added anything yet. We've not added anything. So you see that it's telling you to get started by creating a new file or uploading an existing file. So if you have an existing repository or you want to create a new repository, you can do that using this same git command line here. So first of all, to now push things to that GitHub repository that we just created, first of all, you need to initialize Git. So at this point, we've not initialized Git yet. So this VS Code does not even know that we want to push anything yet. So because we've not initialized it yet, so it doesn't know that we want to push anything yet. So I'm just going to say git init. So all these things I'm going to be writing are going to be git commands, and I'm going to be explaining what those commands do. So this git init is basically initializing Git, telling it that okay, Git, it's time to push something, or I'm ready to push something, basically. Git init, and then git add dot. So what this git add dot means basically is git add the changes I have made. So all these things now, say I have made these changes inside this file. Inside this file now I have this. Let me just write something. Say h1 and then happy to be here. So this now, so I now want Git itself to track that change I just made. So if I want Git to track that change I just made now, I'm saying git add and then dot. What this dot is basically saying is git add every file in this folder. I can equally do git add index.html. That is this file itself that I just changed. I just changed only this .html, this index.html file. So instead of doing that, I can just do git add dot like that. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is to commit those changes. So I'm now committing those changes to GitHub. So you say GitHub git commit and then dash m and then write a message. So this dash m is the message of the commit. So whenever you commit something, you are supposed to add a message describing what you just changed, basically. So let's just write initial commit, because it's our first commit. Initial commit like that. So you see that it's now telling me that I made changes in index.html. And then the next thing that I want to do now is I'm going to go back to this place here, to this place, and then copy this line, these 3 lines: git remote add, then git branch, and then git push. So I'm going to copy these 3 lines and then just paste it here. So what these 3 lines basically means is, first of all, this git remote add origin. So you want to add everything, all these commits that you just made and everything that you've added, you want to add it to this remote origin here. The remote origin being this same test.git repository that we created. And then the next thing is git branch and then main. So git branch, basically, what in GitHub there's something we call branches. Yeah, so branches is like, there is a particular default branch. If I come back to this repository that I showed you earlier, so here now, this thing here, these are branches. So right now the default branch is the main branch. So think of branches as the name, branches. So you have a default branch, then you can equally create other branches inside this particular repository. You can create other branches, meaning that all these folders and files that are here are inside this main branch right now, but I can equally create another branch and call it anything. Say I can call it development or any other thing. These same folders and files are also going to be inside that same branch that I created. The usefulness of creating a separate branch is this main branch now is the default branch. Say if you're working on a project with other people, like a big project, for example, and this main branch being our default branch, when we want to host that project, when we want to, that meaning when we want to host it live, when we want to host it on and put it as a website on its own, it's going to be tracking the changes that it's going to be taken from is going to be this main branch, meaning whatever changes I make on the main branch is going to reflect on that website. So if you are working with other people on a project, you are to create another branch, so whatever changes you are making on your own branch is not going to affect the main branch, unless someone, or let's say the administrator of the whole project, pulls your own changes from your own branch into the main branch. Then those your changes will now reflect on the main website itself. So back to this. So we're telling it to push all these changes to the main branch. If we had another branch, we can change this to and then the branch name itself. So this git push dash u origin main is basically saying, okay, I have made all these changes. Now push those changes to the main branch. So just click enter here. So I clicked enter, and this, it brought in this. So I have not signed in GitHub on these local branches. That means this Git itself doesn't know my own GitHub account yet. So I'm just going to sign in. It's telling me that authentication has completed. So when you see this, all of this, you know that okay, it has actually pushed. It's telling you that it is done. So if we go back to this here now, that's the our repository that we created. So if we go back to this repository that we created, so this is now that index.html that we just pushed. If you don't see this, you can just refresh and then you see all of this. So I've now showed you about 5 git commands. So the next git command that we're going to, or the next concept of git that we're going to be doing, is branching. I already talked about branching, which is like having different branches of the same project. So if you want to create another branch, let's just create another branch. We can do it here. We can create another branch here. We can create another branch here, but we can also create it locally here also. Git branch. This is to check what branch I am on currently. So if I say git branch now, it's telling me that I am on the main branch. So if I want to create another branch and then move to that branch, I'm going to say git checkout dash b, and then the branch name, let's call it development. So this basically means that I'm creating a branch named development. So now I've created the branch named development and I've switched to that branch named development. So that is basically what this is doing. It is creating a branch and then moving you to that branch. So if you see here now, this now changes to development. It was main before, but it changes to development. So if I run git branch again, you see that I am now on development. I am now on development, but there's also another branch named main. If I come back to this GitHub, and you see that I am still on the main branch, but locally I've already switched to the development. But here in the GitHub cloud, I am still on the main branch, and there is only one branch. That is because I have not pushed any change, or I have not pushed anything to this development branch yet. So to fix that problem, I'm going to say git and then push u. That's the same thing we wrote before. This same push u and then origin main, but instead of main this time, I'm going to be saying development, which is the name of the branch. So this. So you now see this. So if I go back to GitHub and then I refresh, You see that I now have two branches. I now have the main and the development. The content of the main is index.html right now, and if I check the content of the development branch now, right now I'm in development, is still the same index.html. The next Git action I'm going to be talking about is pulling changes. So if I make a change on my branch, say I am the administrator of a project, and someone that I'm working with makes a change on their own branch, say the development branch in this case, and I see those changes and I want to pull those changes and then merge them to this main branch, meaning I've seen the changes, I've made any corrections I want to make, and I want to now push it to this main branch. So that action is called pulling and merging. So you can pull changes and you can then merge those changes. So let's just go back here. So I am on development branch now. I'm on development branch now. I want to now make a change and then push it to the development branch. I'm just going to create another file. Let me just create another file and then stage my commits. So you don't have to reinitialize. Once you initialize a project once, you don't have to reinitialize it again. And then commit -m, that's your commit message. And let's say created new file. So this is telling me that this is the file I created, and then I now want to just push to the development. So I can just say here push to this. Since I'm on development, it's going to push to the development branch. So here, if I come back here now, you see that on the development branch, if I refresh, you see that on this development branch I have hello and then index. But if I come to main, this main branch here, and refresh, I only have index. That is because I only pushed to the development branch. So the next thing I want to do now is I want to pull those changes that I made from, like, I want to switch back to main and then pull the changes from development. So you can do that here on GitHub itself. So here where they are telling you to compare and pull request. So this, and you just create a pull request and you leave it so someone else will merge. And you can also do that locally here. So here I can just switch back to main, switch back to the main branch, say git, and then switch, and then the branch name, which is main. So like this. So now I am on the main branch, but you see that this hello.css is no longer here. Like, it's telling me that it's no longer here again. You can see that it's no longer on this my folder panel here, because these changes that I made are only in the development branch. But now what I want to do is I want to pull changes from the development branch. So to pull those changes, I can now say git pull, and then origin, and then the name of the branch I want to pull from. So that's development, like this. So you see that I now have this hello.css in my main branch now. Refresh. You see that on GitHub now we have pulled the changes from the development branch, but they are not yet in this cloud. Just easily just push what we've done, push like that. So we've pushed. Let's check it again. So now we have hello and then index, which is the same thing we have in our development branch. We have hello and then index. In our main, we have hello and then index. So everything is now up to date. So the last Git action I want to show you is to clone a repository. So if you have, I have this repository here, I want to clone a particular repository and then put it, have it locally. So let me just go to another repository. So we're done with this test repository for now. So what I want to do with this repository, I want to clone this repository so I have it locally on my VS Code. So here I'm in a new folder. I created a new folder in VS Code. I named it cloned. You can name it whatever you want to name it. So imagine I want to have this public repository on my local editor. You can only clone a public repository. You can't clone a private repository because you can't even see a private repository. You can only clone a private repository when you have access to it. So you have to be granted access to a private repository before you can even see it or before you can even do anything on it. To clone a repository, first of all you need is this, that is the repository link itself. So if I copy this particular link here, that is this green button here, if I copy it and I come to a browser and I just do this, it's going to now take me to this same repository. So what I want to do is i want to tell I want to tell Git to clone that particular repository using that link that I just have now. And then the command is git clone this, like this. So there are two ways to do this now. So you can either clone this whole you can either clone the whole folder. Remember Git is pushing this whole thing as one repository or one folder basically. So if I'm cloning this whole thing, it's going to put everything inside one folder for me. So basically if I just do this, it's going to put everything inside one folder. That is okay, but if you want it to only push every other folder and every other file inside that repository, inside this your local folder that you already have, you just do that and then write dot. That's after you copy the link and then all this link and then dot. Sorry, the dot is supposed to be outside, not inside. So all this and then space dot, meaning cloning into dot, meaning cloning into this existing folder that is here. So if I have what I have here now is all these things that I have here, which is this final folder, starter folder, and then readme file. I also didn't talk about the readme. So readme basically is describing a repository. That's what it's basically doing. That's what the work of a readme. So this repository, this is the whole description of the repository. So basically that's it. These are the commands you are going to be using over and over and over as you move on. And all these commands, when you know all of this, you already have at least 70% of Git and GitHub on lock already. So just to refresh, we talked about git init, which is to initialize. We talked about adding, which is to add all the files. We talked about commit. We talked about branch. We talked about checkout. We talked about pushing and pulling, and we talked about cloning. So these basically are the git commands you're going to be using over and over again. See you in the next video.